My name is Adrienne, and 3 winters ago, a stranger at my doorstep turned my world upside down. He was dressed in a suit so sharp it seemed to glow, holding a folder embossed with the logo of my hotel chain. At first, I assumed he was a lost guest who'd stumbled into my private residence by mistake. Instead, he introduced himself as a journalist, tracking the story of the unseen hotel magnate. I chuckled initially. I'd deliberately built my empire from the shadows, using shell companies and aliases to keep my identity hidden from competitors and even my own family. But this man had already uncovered more than I wanted to admit. "You're the one who turned Haven Retreat into a billion-dollar enterprise, aren't you?" he asked, his tone quiet but confident. For a moment, I considered denying it. Then I realized why bother. The empire was real, the hotels were real, the thousands of employees who relied on my vision were real. Yet, the family who had once mocked me, who had cut me out of their lives completely, had no clue I held the reins. If you're drawn to tales of rising from nothing when everyone counts you out, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happened next. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a home where the lawn was always perfect, but the truth was always twisted. My parents, Victor and Elaine, raised us in a world fixated on appearances. Dad festered with resentment after his failed stab at running a bed and breakfast, his bitterness tainting every family talk. Mom chased status symbols, country club dues we couldn't cover, designer purses bought on loans, dinner parties that sank us deeper into debt. My siblings played their parts flawlessly. Lance, my brother, was the golden boy, careless, reckless, but worshipped. Sophie, my sister, was Mom's mirror, stunning, compliant, destined to marry wealth. Me, I was the outsider. The kid running a pretend hotel in her bedroom, crafting menus for stuffed animals, charging them for room views and extra pillows. I turned a lemonade stand into a 3-flavor operation with a loyalty card system that earned $300 one summer. At 15, I started a lawn mowing business, hiring help and mapping routes like a strategist planning a battle. Each time I hoped my parents would notice me. Instead, Dad called it a hobby. Mom frowned and asked what the neighbors would say. By high school, I gave up trying to fit their mold. While Sophie went to prom and Lance soaked up unearned praise, I cleaned rooms and changed linens at a local inn, learning the trade from the bottom up. My parents were horrified. "What will people think?" Mom snapped. But I didn't care. I wasn't chasing their approval. I was building something tangible. When college came, they expected me to pick a small liberal arts school and chase a husband. Instead, I chose hospitality management at Lakehurst University. They cut me off financially without a second thought. I worked 3 jobs, survived on ramen, and carved my path one shift at a time. Graduation should have been a victory. I had honors, job offers, professors who backed me. But sitting alone in that crowd of families, I felt the sting of being unseen. It fueled my determination. I'd create something so undeniable that even those who dismissed me would have to take notice. I took the least flashy job offer, Markley Properties, a struggling small chain. Within months, I caught the attention of Rose McAllister, a manager who pushed me with every grueling, exhausting task until I proved my instincts. When I revamped one hotel floor with personal touches, charging stations, local artwork, handwritten welcome notes, guests started requesting Adrienne's floor by name. Soon, I was head of guest experience for the whole chain. But improving someone else's failing business wasn't enough. I wanted my own. So when I scraped together funds for a rundown motel in Newark, I threw myself into it, hammering walls by day, drafting plans by night. 6 months later, Haven Retreat opened, and the risk paid off. It grew, first 3 properties, then 10, then dozens. Investors came calling, and I sealed deals that launched me into the billion-dollar league. I became the invisible hotelier, anonymous but undeniable. And then, like flies to honey, my family came slinking back. I first heard about it in the oddest way. I was staying undercover at a rival's hotel in Manhattan, gathering intel as I often did, unnoticed, just another guest with a notebook tucked in her bag. At the bar, I overheard the manager griping to a coworker. "Some guy named Victor Cole keeps calling," he said, exasperated. "Claims he's tight with the CEO of Cole Hospitality, says it's family. He's begging for a ticket to the Crown Summit." I froze, my drink untouched, ice melting. My father tossing my name around like a master key to doors he'd once locked against me. The irony stung. For years, they'd ridiculed me, called my ambition childish, my dreams foolish, refused to help with college, laughed when I bought a crumbling motel. Now that I'd turned that risk into a billion-dollar empire, they were clawing at my success, using the one thing they'd never valued. A few discreet inquiries confirmed my suspicions. Their polished world had imploded. Dad's latest business venture had ended in fraud and bankruptcy. Their home was in foreclosure. Lance's gambling debts had drawn dangerous collectors. Sophie's storybook marriage had collapsed, leaving her penniless with 2 kids. They hadn't even realized Adrienne Cole, the mysterious CEO in the headlines, was the same Adrienne they'd dismissed. Maybe they thought the empire belonged to a man, or maybe it never occurred to them I could achieve this. I had choices. I could bar them from the crown summit entirely, make them outcasts in the industry Dad once mocked. But that felt too simple, too quick. No, I wanted them to step into the Sapphire Crown in Chicago, my flagship hotel, and face the empire they'd called a pipe dream. So I approved their passes, upgraded their rooms to deluxe suites. Not the presidential suite, though. That was mine. On the morning of the summit, I stood on the mezzanine, watching the flood of executives and reporters stream through the lobby. At 10:15 sharp, I spotted them. My parents lugging too many bags, Lance pale and disheveled, Sophie fragile but stunning in a dress 1 season out of date. They approached the front desk with the same fake confidence they'd worn my whole life. "Cole party checking in," Dad declared, chest puffed out. "We're personal guests of Adrienne Cole." The desk clerk, trained by me to handle tricky VIPs with poise, smiled. "Welcome, Mr. Cole, 4 deluxe king rooms. The presidential suite is reserved for our keynote speaker." Their faces tightened. Mom leaned in, her voice dripping with fake charm. "Could you call your manager, dear? We'd hate for there to be a mix-up." Right on cue, Michael Tran, my general manager, stepped forward. That's when I made my move. My heels clicked softly on the marble as I approached. "Is there an issue, Michael?" I asked, my tone calm, measured. Dad barely glanced at me, dismissing me as he always had. "This isn't your concern. We're speaking with management." I let the silence linger, then smiled. "Actually, as the owner of this hotel and the host of this summit, it's very much my concern." Dad launched into his rehearsed tale about his close ties to Adrienne Cole. I let him finish, relishing every false word. Then I locked eyes with him. "That's quite a story," I said softly. "Tell me, Dad, don't you recognize your own daughter?" For a moment, the busy lobby seemed to vanish. Their faces went pale. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Lance stopped scrolling on his phone. Sophie's lips parted in shock. "Hello, Mom, Dad, Lance, Sophie," I said evenly. "Welcome to my hotel." The silence that followed was almost funny. For once, Dad, who always had a sharp or witty comeback, was speechless. His mouth opened, shut, then opened again like a fish out of water. Mom recovered first, her face shifting from stunned to syrupy in a heartbeat. "Adrienne, sweetheart," she cooed, stepping toward me. "We've been trying to get in touch. We're so proud of what you've built." I didn't step forward to hug her. I kept my hands clasped calmly. "That's odd," I said. "My number hasn't changed in a decade." Sophie, ever the performer, reached out for an embrace. "We've told everyone about you," she said brightly. "We knew you'd do amazing things." I stepped back slightly. Her smile wavered. Dad finally spoke, his voice thick with forced warmth. "Adrienne, my girl, what a surprise," he said, laughing weakly. "You should have told us what you were working on. We could have helped." My tone was sharper than I meant. I remember calling home in college and being told I was on my own. I remember working 3 jobs while you paid Lance's tuition, Sophie's wedding, Mom's memberships. I remember telling you I wanted to buy a hotel and hearing nothing but laughter. The facade cracked. Dad's jaw clenched, his voice dipping into the familiar anger of my childhood. "We're still your family." I let the words hang before responding, steady and quiet. "Family shows up, family believes, family supports. You did none of that." I turned to Michael. "Please ensure the Coles are settled into their rooms. Standard amenities only, and bill every incidental in full." "Yes, Miss Cole," he said smoothly. The weight of my title hit them like a stone. Dad's voice broke as I walked away. "After all we've done for you?" "Exactly," I said without turning, leaving them standing in the lobby, stripped of their pretense. That night, Dad cornered me again. His bravado was gone, replaced by desperation. He asked for a private talk. "We're in trouble," he admitted quietly. "The house, the debts, Sophie's situation, we need your help." For the first time, I saw them not as the towering figures of my childhood, but as small, flawed people whose world of appearances had crumbled. I listened, then I set my terms. "If I help, it won't be as your partner or your ATM. It'll be as your daughter on my terms. You all go to therapy. Lance gets treatment. Sophie learns a skill. You stop living for show and start living honestly. If you can't agree, I'm done. To my surprise, Dad didn't argue. He nodded, eyes lowered. We have a deal. The months that followed were unlike anything I'd known. For the first time, my family wasn't performing for the neighbors or each other. They were simply human. Therapy broke us open. Old grudges poured out like a flood, every hurt, every slight, every unspoken wound. Dad cried in front of me for the first time, admitting how his own failures had twisted him. Mom confessed that her obsession with status was less about pride than fear. Fear of being ordinary, of being forgotten. Sophie lashed out at them for raising her to be decorative instead of self-reliant, then surprised us by finding a knack for event planning. Lance, humbled after rehab, learned humility one barista shift at a time. It wasn't easy or smooth. There were arguments, walkouts, nights when I doubted it would last, but slowly something changed. Dad started volunteering at a nonprofit, mentoring kids who reminded him of his younger, driven self. Mom picked up painting again, swapping purses for paintbrushes. Sophie turned her organizational skills into a budding event planning business. And Lance showed up to Thanksgiving sober and on time. For him, that was a win. That Thanksgiving was the first family holiday we'd shared in over 7 years. My dining table, usually reserved for colleagues and friends, now held my family. The same people who'd once called me a fool, now softened by reality and maybe redemption. The conversation was clunky at times, filled with pauses and careful words. But there was also laughter, real laughter. After dinner, Dad stood, his coffee mug shaking in his hand. His voice broke as he said, to Adrienne, who showed us that success isn't about appearances. It's about honesty, grit, and building something real. You gave us a second chance we didn't earn. I raised my mug. To growth, I said, and to the courage to start over, whether it's a business or a family. As I looked around that table, I realized something profound. My empire wasn't the gleaming hotels with my name on them or the billion-dollar deals I'd signed. My empire was this: the strength to stand alone, the drive to build something from nothing, and the wisdom to open the door again, not on their terms, but on mine.